Hi guys, welcome to our first online tutorial class for mobile application development. Now, I know previously we talked about mostly fragments, and this is an important topic we have here. Particularly, we will be dealing with fragments a lot in this class. If we look at the first part of this course, dealing with fragments, we talk about how to use fragments, how to add fragments into our application, and how to remove and how to add a fragment into the backtrace, into the stack. Now, in part 2 of our tutorial, as a recap, we talk about how we can communicate between two fragments, and this was a important part of trying to build an application where we are able to communicate or the content of one fragment or an action of one fragment into another fragment. So this is an important part for you to understand how we can create events on one particular fragment, on the UI of one particular fragment, and have the output of this event to reflect on a different fragment. For example, in our second tutorial, we could use this slider to change the size of this font on a different fragment. Now, the intention of this tutorial, online tutorial, is to cover the stuff that we did not manage to cover during normal class time. And for part 3 of fragments, we learn how to handle dynamic content for multiple screen support. This allows us to come up with applications that would look differently on different screen sizes. Now, this is the idea that we were talking about in tutorial number 3. So for a handphone device, we would have two separate fragments that exist in the activity, right? But for a tablet device, the interface or the UI should contain two fragments in one activity. Now, what we miss here particularly is a couple of things. What I want to cover first is handling fragment UI, right? Particularly for events. Now, if we look at the tutorial in part 3, and let me show you the program, right? Particularly we have two fragments, fragment 1, right? We have fragment 1 and fragment 2, right? These are two simple fragments, and on each of these fragments, for fragment 1, we can see that in fragment 1 is a simple design of our UI. Right? For a tablet, we can change how it would look like on a phone, for example, by clicking this menu on top, and we can see how it looks like on, for example, Nexus 5. Right? And this is how the UI should look like. For the other fragments, for example, here in fragment 2, we can see that here is the output of our application, and this is particularly simple. The idea is when we click this button on one fragment, right, and the event of this button will show the other fragment. Now this is particularly easy to do. Now let me show you the problem with this kind of UI. It was easy to implement. What we have is that we add a fragment. Now our activity would have two frame layouts. Right? So during the first part of it, we would add one fragment. Now when the application starts and someone clicks the button, what we will do is we will check whether fragment 2 actually exists, right? Or the frame layout for frame layout exists or doesn't exist. Right? If frame layout 2 does not exist, then what we will do is that we will add a it means that we are on a single layout. Now in order to do this, we need two types of activity main.xml. One is for the default layout that exists here, and you would have to create another folder, right, for something with a higher resolution. Right? This would be the same activity underscore main.xml. They're the same name because Android will look for this file depending on the Android size of the screen. Right? Okay, let's run this application and see how it looks like. So when you run, particularly, you can choose for a tablet device. Right? And when you choose a tablet device, what you'll see when it's running, this will take a while. Hold on. We'll see when it's running. Okay. Is it coming out? Alright. So this is the button, right? And this is the example. So if we click here, you'll see that the result comes on the other frame on this side. Right? Okay, that's fine, right? So let's turn this off first. Right? This seems to work. There's no real back button because both frames are started at the same time. Right? Okay, so suppose we have a suppose we have a different device here, and if we click run and we choose a smaller device, for example the Nexus 1, which is a phone size, right? You'll see that there's only one fragment loaded, right? And if we click the button, it will go to a different activity in this case. Now this is nice, right? However, if we do try to press the back button on this, right? the application just closes, right? And this does not seem to be a correct behavior. Oftentimes, when you click on an button and then with this other frame coming out within the activity, you should be able to click the back button to make changes on the previous fragment if you make some mistake. This is a normal UI behavior. Alright, now why does this happen, and how do we fix it? Now, in order, we didn't manage to cover this in class, but in Fragments Part 1, we did mention of the API that handles this. Particularly when you're dealing with fragments, you have to add the fragment into a stack before committing on a replacement or addition. For example here, let's look at the code right here, and it's pretty evident here that you know we handle the on click button. For when there's two fragments, what we'll do is that we add the new fragment or replace a new fragment in frame layout tool for the large screen activity main.xml, right? So we have two layout. One is called FL1, the other is called FL2, right? And if you look at this main activity, that's what we're doing, right? Replacing FL2 with the fragment F2, right? Which we define in the beginning of the program, right? Now, if it's a single frame layout, which is a handful, we know we have to replace only one fragment. So this Android will choose the layout, the default layout, with only one frame layout, which is FL1. Now in FL1, we have to replace FL1 with the fragment 2 of this application running. The problem is when we press the back button, the application cannot find the previous fragment that was loaded. Now, in order to fix that, you have to find or you have to allow the Android application to keep this the first frame. So before committing on any changes on the fragment, we have to add the old fragment into the back stack of the fragment. Now by doing this line that I have added, okay, so I'm asking the fragment transaction to allow to put the previous fragment that I just replaced into the back stack, right? And then after doing that, issue a commit command, right? So before I commit into anything, I should have this line over here to make sure that I add the previous fragment into the fragment backstack. So okay, let's try running this application and see whether it works this time, right? If I press the back button. So let's start with the application on Nexus 1 and we'll see how this works. It's gonna take a while. Okay, that's the application being loaded now. Okay, so if I click this button, hello world would come out on a different fragment, but previously the back button doesn't work. So if I press the back button, you can see now that we're back to the activity button, right? So now the back button works as it should. Now when you're building applications, this is an important feature that you have to support. Okay, so I hope that covers what I missed in class for fragments in part 3.